All right, first speaker is going to be Chairman Tracy.
All right. Good morning.
Is it a sense of relief, or is it a bittersweet?
It's mixed emotions, a sense of relief. I don't have to wake up tomorrow morning and think of who I'm going to call for money or to be a volunteer. But I've really enjoyed the 3.5 years. When I was asked by several people to become chairman of the Illinois Republican Party at a time when we were in the super minority and we had so few congressionals, no statewides, I was thinking, should I do this? I'm 70, 71 years old. I had a good career already. Should I take on this kind of what some people thought would be a mission impossible? And I was listening to a podcast by Dan Crenshaw, congressman from Texas, Navy SEAL who lost an eye in service overseas. And he said every now and then, you need to do something that is really, really hard because it builds character. And I thought to myself, being chairman of the Illinois Republican Party is going to be a really, really hard job. And I said, all right, I'm going to do it. And I'm so glad I've done it. Everybody tells me it's a thankless job, the most thankless job in the maybe in the Republican ecosystem. And I like to say all the time that this is the worst paying job I've ever had, but the most important. But people thank me for it all the time. And they say, do you ever get discouraged? Well, of course you get discouraged when you're every day getting up and you're climbing uphill, charging uphill against an embedded enemy. But there's so many people, so many great Republicans and other conservatives that have encouraged me every step of the way. And I do feel like we've made progress. You don't turn around a big state like Illinois overnight. It takes time. It takes building political infrastructure. And we've done that. We doubled our political infrastructure and our operational capabilities in the last 3.5 years. That's not enough. We need to double it again and then double it again. But I do feel like we've made a lot of progress. And I'm so proud to have Kathy Salvi as my successor. I cannot imagine a better successor than Kathy Salvi. I'm a huge fan of Kathy Salvi. She has been an ally for many, many years. She joined our finance committee 3.5 years ago. When we needed a candidate to run against Senator Duckworth to fill out the ticket, a really good candidate, Kathy Salvi stepped into the breach. And she gave up her time and her treasure. She spent a lot of family money on that race and was a really good candidate. So she took that slight break from the finance committee, but then she came right back. And she's been helping us every step of the way. So I think she'll be a really good successor.
So in Ronald Reagan's words, is the Illinois Republican Party better off today than it was 4 years ago?
I believe so. It's better off. It needs to be better and better off. Like I said, we've made progress. There needs to be more.
Leader,
but we've started.
What advice did you give Kathy when she threw her head in the ring?
To work on unity, obviously, and to raise money.
Leader McComey mentioned yesterday having a 10-year plan for getting out of super minority and becoming more competitive. Based on, you said you built the infrastructure to bring back the Republican Party. When can we maybe see the fruits of that labor? Do you have a 10-year plan?
Our plan is to build up political infrastructure. And, in the past, when we had all the 6 white offices, the statewide offices, all of them, and we had the president of the Senate, Pate Phillip, and we were not in the super minority in the House, and we had U.S. senators. We could rely on statewide campaigns and healthy statewide organizations to do voter turnout and election integrity and all that. We don't have that anymore. So the state party has to step into the breach on that. And so that's what we've been working on, is to build it. We dipped our toe in voter turnout 2 year ago. We're going to be doing more of that this year. And we have really ramped up our election integrity efforts and now have a full-time election integrity director. But that's the state party. We're just a small part of the ecosystem. We generally don't recruit candidates, and we don't fund candidates, and we don't manage candidates. What we do is we work on the stuff that's not exciting. The infrastructure stuff like voter turnout and election integrity, and that's what we're more and more focused on. And that doesn't pay dividends overnight, but over time it will.
What is the issue with voting integrity that needs to be resolved? What are your concerns?
You know, it used to be we had election day. Now we have election season. It used to be we didn't have same day registration, and now we do, and that creates chaos for the county clerks in Illinois who administer the election. It used to be that we stopped counting the ballots on election night, and we stopped receiving them. In Illinois now, they come in 14 days later. It used to be you had to have an excuse to vote by mail, and now it's universal mail-in balloting. And it's gone from like 1 or 2 or 3% up to 30 or 40%. And that creates all kinds of issues. It creates issues with people that want to take advantage of the system, game the system, but also just makes it a harder job for the county clerks who administer our elections. So a lot of the issues are just errors because it's just so chaotic with all the voting mail. And then with voting by mail, the one thing you have for election integrity guardrail is signature verification. In Illinois, it used to be you could only do that. You had to match the signature with the registration. But in DuPage County, they decided they're going to match it against the application for the ballot, which a trial judge in DuPage County said was a recipe for fraud. So all of these things have made election integrity critically important, so important it needs to be a year-round effort now instead of just 40 days out.
So
Should the people
Last
of
question.
Illinois, should the people of Illinois have confidence in the integrity of Illinois' elections?
They should. It's never. There's no perfect situation. But don't tell anybody. You're the media. You have a responsibility, obviously, to report accurately. Please don't tell people that there is no such thing as voting fraud. I did a press conference in Madison County 2 years ago during the 2022 election, where there was a Democrat who was falsifying signatures on write-in ballots. Fortunately, she was caught. There were 39 ballots that they did find out about, but they caught it on the second day. How many more she falsified, I don't know, and she pled guilty just last year. There is voting fraud, and fraud happens when you have chaos, and mail-in balloting has made it harder and harder. But I want to tell people, particularly Republicans, you've got to vote. The only way, we have very loose rules. We don't have voter ID. We need voter ID. How can anybody be against voter ID? The only Democrats are against. The people support it like 70 or 80%. So, but we need better election integrity in Illinois. But in the meantime, the only way to change it, the only way to get better election integrity rules, and so we can have more assurance, more confidence in fair and honest election, is to tighten up the voting rules in Illinois. And we can't do that until we win. So Republicans, conservatives, vote, and vote early. Thank you.
Oh, down.
All right, thank you, Chairman. Congressman.
Call for the Secret Service Director to resign. I guess tell us what prompted you to take that step.
Well, I serve on the House Intelligence Committee, and I was on a call yesterday with Speaker Johnson. It's unacceptable what the Secret Service didn't do on Saturday. I've called for the Secret Service Director to step down. I think it's unacceptable, the actions that they didn't take to secure the perimeter for President Trump. Secret Service has one job to do. That's to protect the entity that they're in charge of protecting. That didn't happen. You know, it's really embarrassing and unacceptable to see the videos that have come out, the fact this guy got on a ladder, climbed up on a shed, and was able to shoot at President Trump. And for the grace of God, we're not dealing with a different tragedy this week. And so there will be an independent commission created by Speaker Johnson that hopefully will be bipartisan. We will follow the facts and evidence. I'm a former federal prosecutor. We need to follow the facts and evidence, make sure people are held accountable. That starts with the director stepping down today, and other people that didn't do their job should be held accountable.
Do you have confidence moving forward that they'll do the job properly, not just for Trump or Biden or even RFK Jr. or whoever else?
Well, we have to wait and see on that. I hope this is a wake-up call to the Secret Service and other federal agencies that simply this is unacceptable. So we have to obviously learn from the mistakes that were made here, but redouble our efforts and make sure that Congress, in their oversight role, is holding people accountable and making sure nothing like this ever happens again. It's an embarrassment for the United States. It's a weakness that the United States is viewed around the world when the leading presidential candidate is shot at and almost murdered.
Congressman, President Trump still questions the results of the 2020 election. Will you accept the results of this election if your candidate loses?
Well, first of all, we've seen none of that at this convention. Not anything related to what happened in the election in 2020. Everything has been focused on the future. Listen, is election integrity important? Yes, it is. In 2020, were there improprieties? Of course there were. People that shouldn't have voted, voted. Illegals that voted, voted. The COVID restrictions that were in place, particularly in Philadelphia, Milwaukee here, Detroit, unacceptable. And there were things that went wrong. So are we redoubling our efforts this year to make sure this is an election that is run by the law, that has proper integrity? Of course we are. So we're going to watch and monitor to make sure things are done differently than 2020. Obviously, the 6 states that were at issue in 2020, we've changed the election laws, for instance, in Georgia and Arizona and a number of other places. But there's no doubt we're going to have to be keenly focused and acutely aware of the circumstances of this election.
How do you
Congressman,
watch and monitor this?
What is the party doing to prepare for what might happen with the Democratic candidate Joe Biden?
Well, I don't want to comment on what the Democrats are doing, but I mean,
What is your party doing to prepare for
A different candidate, you're saying?
well, I don't know that you can prepare for that. The Dump Biden movement continues to get stronger every single day. And so I don't know what they're going to do, but they are in a free fall right now in terms of what they're doing. Dysfunction is seeped into their party. And so I don't know what they're going to do, but I would just tell you this. I think their convention is going to be much different than this convention in terms of the unity and what we've seen here. The chaos, the dysfunction, and what's going to happen in Chicago, I think can be really, really problematic for them. But they're going to do what they're going to do. What we need to be focused on, I went back to what I said in there. President Trump has been focused and disciplined, and his team has. That's what we need to do when we leave this convention. They're going to do what they're going to do, but if we stay focused, we're going to win in this election.
Your thoughts on Governor Pritzker possibly being considered if Biden was to step aside?
Listen, I think if Governor Pritzker didn't have $1 billion, he wouldn't be in office right now. So I think, but for his money is the only reason why he's been in office. So I don't think many people outside of his media window, bubble, pay any attention to Governor Pritzker.
Last question. When do you think the more disciplined, more focused Donald Trump started?
Well, I'll tell you this. Watching him in 16 and watching him in 20, I think there's been a couple factors. One, Chris LaCivita and Susie Wiles have been extremely disciplined in this campaign. They have kept him on track. Starting in the primary and working through the primary system, I would also say the debate prep. Do you watch that debate prep? They were on, I mean, they did everything exactly the right way. The vice presidential pick, waiting until the very last minute to pick J.D. Vance. No one knew what was going on there. This convention is run much differently. And so I think this is a much different President Trump in terms of listening to advisors around him and focusing on what's important. And I think that's been extremely beneficial. The last point that I will make is elections are about the future, not the past. When people want a strong, energetic, optimistic leader that can lead this country, Joe Biden can't do that. And anybody that watched that debate knows he can't do that. President Trump's strength after Saturday and what he showed, what he's going to show tonight in unifying the country, that is the focus and discipline we see with President Trump.
So how do you watch and monitor differently than
Thank you, everybody.
I guess I'm up.
Congressman Bost, can I pose that same question to you? What will it take for you to accept the election results if President Trump loses, particularly the voting integrity questions that have been talked about?
Look, the reason why the problems that were occurred, and we're not talking about the past, but the reasons that we have to make sure of, we have an obligation as Congress. We have to certify the election, okay? But it's not about voter fraud, because that has to be handled at the state level. That's very, very clear in the Constitution. We made a major study of this 4 years ago. And what we have to do is, though, here's what it says. The Constitution says this very clearly. The state legislature must decide all the election laws and put the election laws in place. That doesn't change because there's an outbreak of a disease or anything like that. And that's where the problem occurred. As far as what we're going, is there voter fraud that occurs around this nation? The answer is, sure there is. But it's up to the states to fix that problem.
Will you accept the results, whatever the states send?
I have accepted except for the states that I voted against as far as certification, as long as their state legislature does their job, which is running their own elections as the Constitution says. If it's constitutional, I will support it. I don't believe we're going to have those problems this time. I hope we don't. We didn't know we were going to have them last time, but we also didn't see COVID coming like a wave.
Your thoughts on the Secret Service director?
She needs to go. She failed. Then we need to find out, like as said, we have this special commission that goes in. The oversight committee was already gearing up anyway, but now we're going to do the special committee. I'm glad we are, because we need to find out. It's not just about what happened with Donald Trump, because we need to know that. What happened at that rally? What fell and failed? So we need to answer that. We also need to know in the future that never happens again. I don't care if it's Democrat, Republican, Independent. Once you receive your detail from the Secret Service, they need to do their job. Their primary is their primary. They should never care about what their party is. They should never care about how they feel about the particular candidate. Their job is to protect their primary. It's simple.
Congressman, if Joe Biden steps aside, who would you like to see in that spot, and who do you think it will be?
All right, let me tell you that it is going to be very hard for them not to move up the vice president. That will be very hard to sell if they don't do that. The convention rules are kind of questionable at best, because it all boils down to the fact that this particular president who has earned these delegates has to actually step down and turn the delegates over unless they use the 25th Amendment. And if they use the 25th, then it goes through a whole big process. So the question is I believe that they have no choice but to go to the vice president if that is the process that they use. But I'm going to also say this. I don't care which one they put up. Right now, Donald Trump is going to beat him.
That's right.
Donald Trump's going to beat him.
Congressman, there was talk about congressional term limits from a couple of speakers.
Yeah.
Would you support that?
No, I never have.
Why?
And here's why. What happens in the states, as well as what would happen in Congress, if you put term limits in place, bureaucrats take control of the government, because they know how long that you're going to be in, and they're just going to outlast you. And every state that has passed term limits, that's the problem they see. Look, we have term limits. Guess what? Every 2 years. I want you to think about this, because I was state rep. I've ran every 2 years since 1992. Every 2 years, my voters have a chance to say, nope, no more. And you know what? And one of the best cases that people used to use to argue for term limits was, well, what about Rostenkowski? Well, what happened? Rostenkowski, when they found out what was going on, guess what happened? He got beat. So the answer is, the term limits is a real good buzzword, but there's also a lot of people that claim that they support term limits, and they're going to put term limits on themselves until the time runs out. And we can give you a whole list of those.
If President Trump does win, he's talked about mass deportations of illegal immigrants in a state like Illinois. How do you see that playing out?
I'm going to tell you how it plays out. If you came here illegally and you did not go through the proper channels, and you have disobeyed the law to come here in a nation of law, we've got to have law. And deportation is the answer if you've got a place that you can be deported back to. Now, let me tell you, that's going to be tough, because you have to also discover whether that person came from a hostile, whether they were truly seeking asylum, okay? And then there would be no place to send them back to. But that's why we need to make sure we're doing it. Let me tell you, when we fix the border problem, when we slow it down to a point that it is, and it's always going to be a problem, but we actually have controlled entrances, and then people are really sneaking in, and that number slows down. It's going to take us years to truly straighten out the problem, but we have to straighten out the problem. And the answer to your question is, if you came here illegally, that was a choice of yours. We're a country of law, and you need to be going back. You need to be going back as soon as possible and then you can start to seek coming back if you want to through legal channels.
In Illinois, we have the Trust Act, which prevents local and state law enforcement from, enforcing immigration detainers.
The question is immigration an issue for the states, or is immigration an issue for the federal government? I believe it is the federal government that has an issue with federal and should enforce our laws that way. The 10th Amendment is something that needs to be argued out. That's fine. But the question is, when it comes to our borders in the Constitution, we're supposed to do that. For our national borders. Everything else inside your state you can handle. But when we start talking about illegals coming to the United States, states shouldn't have that power.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.
Morning.
Representative. I'm going to pose the same question to you. You're not in Congress. You don't get to do anything about it, but I want to hear about your thoughts on voter integrity and accepting the results if this does lead to a Trump loss. Is that something that the party should accept?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, we need to find out what happened first. If there is evidence of fraud, then we need to look at it. If there is no evidence of fraud, of course, we need to accept it. That was easy.
President Trump's speech tonight. Former President Trump's.
I'm sorry?
What are you hoping to hear from Trump's speech tonight?
You know, I think we're going to see a totally different former president. If you saw him come out on Monday, he just looks like a totally different person. He's very humbled. I mean, when you stare death in the face like he did, it changes you. I hope we hear a message of a positive future, how he is going to move this country forward, how we're going to get back to the policies that he implemented before, because there's no denying that 4 years ago, you had more money in your pocket. 4 years ago, the interest rate was not as high as it is today. 4 years ago, the dictators around the world were behaving themselves. I want to hear a positive message on how we move the country forward and how he is going to make the lives of every citizen of the United States better.
Are you concerned about how Trump's policy still might be a deterrent for voters in the suburbs who aren't really sure if they're...
You know, I've gotten to speak to a lot of folks in the suburbs, and I can tell you they may not like the way the president delivers something verbally, but they are really starting to understand the policies that he put in place. Again, they realized that they had more money in their pocket. They realized that the inflation was nowhere near as high, and they realized that the dictators around the world behaved themselves. They are realizing that things were much better, and I think maybe they hold their nose when they do it, but they're going to vote for Donald Trump.
Representative, a small number of your colleagues have served as delegates and guests at this convention. Should we read anything into that?
Absolutely not. I mean, when you have all these people running for president, you pick your favorite. You don't become a delegate normally after the fact. You know, there's people that were delegates for Nikki Haley. There were people that were delegates for DeSantis. I wouldn't read into that at all, because you all have to pick your favorites, and you don't then usually become a delegate for the next guy.
Representative, your thoughts on the Trust Act and how that might impact any kind of deportation efforts?
Well, we can talk about this in length, but I will say that we need to repeal the Trust Act in the state of Illinois. Yes. That will help. And we need to make sure that we take care of the citizens that are in the state of Illinois before we take care of people that come here illegally.
Who do you believe will be the Democratic nominee in November?
Well, if I was a betting man, I would say it's going to be Joe Biden.
Why?
Well, because, I mean, he doesn't seem like he wants to leave. And he holds delegates. So why are people trying to force him out?
Is it better or worse for President Trump if the candidate is Joe Biden?
I don't think President Trump really cares who the next nominee is if it's not Joe Biden. I mean, I think you see right now that the country is ready for the change back to President Trump. I think he wins in a landslide, no matter who it is.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you.